Good morning. We're working on Unit 8 today. The topic for Unit 8, at least the title of the unit, is Know Your Industry and Career Path, and a secondary topic that goes with it, which is content curation, which kind of leads to a larger goal. All right, so those are the two topics, and what I'd like to do right away is kind of start jumping into some of the resources that we're going to talk about in here. And I'm going to do just a couple clicks of zoom here. So you guys can make this a little bit more readable. This should be active in Blackboard for you this morning. You guys are nodding, so that's good. Otherwise, I'm sure I'd hear griping right away. All right, so the first activity that we're going to do leads us to the completion of one of the assignments, or at least in the mindset of completing one of the assignments. And the first thing that I think is really important when you kind of venture into a career path. And I don't mean to scare you guys, because some of you guys are coming into school and you might not be so certain about what you're going to do in life yet. And I get that, because you know what? I went through the same thing. When I started at a technical college, I didn't start out in the computer field. In fact, I was in the business field, and it was towards the end of that degree that I got to take like 1 or 2 computer classes. And I kind of got interested in it, and not because that was my primary focus. I didn't even own a computer back then, but I thought, wow, this is kind of cool. This might have a future. Who'd have thunk it back in the 80s that computers would go somewhere. But I thought the writing was on the wall even back then. It was pretty clear that computers are going to get pretty huge. When I went on to complete my bachelor's degree, I started out by first working on completing my business degree, because I already had an associate's in business, so I figured, well, a bachelor's now makes sense, right? Because I got all these credits done. And then, of course, as I was doing that, I learned more about computers, and then I was like, what am I going to do with a business degree? And then I ended up, double majoring and pulling in a computer science degree as well. A little bit of a glutton for punishment and a great way to rack up more debt, but that's what I did. And looking back on it, I'm very glad I did, because I'm not sure where I would be if I would have just followed a business path. Probably pretty unhappy, frankly. Because, business, for as cool as it is, if I was like working management in some company or something, I might be happy. But I find that computers are a lot more compelling, a lot more creative, a lot more fun, right? But it doesn't mean that you don't learn about what you're doing. So like if you guys are gamers, for example, and I get a lot of them in my classes, it's often what kind of draws you to computing in the first place. It's like, wow, gaming is really cool. I really dig it. I'd like to work with computers in some capacity, maybe even make my own game someday or whatever, right? And you get this thirst that goes with it, and it's that thirst that I'm trying to maybe spark in you a little bit. But once you get into the fray and you start learning about whatever it is you're learning about, there's so many online sources of information now that are out there that are excellent sources for picking up information that strengthen what you're learning here at school. And then ultimately, when you get out into the work world, and maybe your schooling stops or becomes more of a trickle, where you train occasionally, the stuff that you pull in online becomes really important, both functionally for your career and for kind of looking towards the future as to what's coming down the line. Because I'm going to tell you, whatever you guys learn here at school and you go out and you get employed, some of these basic things will always continue, but at the same time, we can't predict what the IT world's going to be like in 20 or 30 years. And I look more at the young people, like 20 years from now, you guys mark my words, whatever it looks like now, it's going to look completely different then. And it's going to progress in ways that we can't even imagine yet, in like science fiction kind of realities. Don't be surprised when weird things start to happen in the future related to IT. Like one of the big things that's happening right now is this quantum computing thing, right? And if you guys study that at all, it's huge. We're really on the precipice of this huge breakthrough in technology that's going to allow us to speed up computing operations to such a degree that the technology that we're using now is going to look like, stones and knives compared to like a machine gun, That's kind of like the functional difference. All right, but let's talk about some of the resources that we have listed here. So what we did as kind of a department, and Wendy Revelinsky is the one who actually put this list together for us. But the way she put the list together, she came around to all the web faculty at one of our meetings. She says, I'm putting together this list for the web orientation class about like really useful resources. Like, what do you guys use, or what do you tell your students to use, right? So like already, like one of the first websites that I pointed out to you guys, that's one of the key ones for web developers, is this one, W3 Schools, right? And I don't know how many of you actively use this site or check it out, but I'm going to tell you what, if ever you have a question about HTML, CSS, JavaScript, or any one of these key web technologies, so you see all these technologies here? Any one of those technologies, key web technologies, this is the go-to site to come to and learn about a lot of these things online. Now, the goal of the W3C, of course, is to set the standards for HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. They set the standards for the 3 core web languages. Some of the other languages are just kind of add-ons. They're developed by private companies or nonprofit organizations or community, as we call open source communities. But they have so much going on here that you can learn, including just about every language that we teach in our program. So I just go down this list and I'm like, we teach this, we kind of look at that. All right, colors, icons, graphics, a little bit of those. We're not really heavy into those. You learn a little bit of SAS later on in your program. You'll definitely learn a bunch of JavaScript, a bunch of jQuery. We're about to offer 2 new elective courses in React and Angular starting next spring, just so you guys know. We also will learn about JSON, AJAX, etc. You'll learn SQL in your databases class and a bunch of other classes. You'll also learn PHP. You'll learn ASP and ASP.NET. You'll learn Node.js in your Web 2 class. You might even get a couple little demos here and there about Raspberry Pis, and if you guys never heard of those, there's these round things that taste really delicious with raspberry filling. That's a joke. But you guys know what a Raspberry Pi even is?
Yeah, it's a portable computer it's a small computer that was designed to be affordable.
Yeah, it's basically a credit card sized computer system. It's a little bit bigger than a credit card with some chips on it. Most people usually buy a case for it and a power supply. The hard drive is a little SD card. You use the same kind of like power supply that you use to power your smartphones, and it's a full-blown computer system. And with all the little doodads, it's usually under $50, $60, $70. It's pretty amazing. So I'm surprised that they have it on here, but it just shows how it's going. In terms of programming languages, take a look at the programming languages they're pushing. And not ironically, we teach Python in our program, we teach Java in our program, we teach C# in our program. If you're in the software developer program or gaming, you also learn a little bit of C++, and you'll see that a lot of the languages kind of overlap and do other things. But look at all the different technologies that are listed here. It's a significant amount, and there's references, there's exercises, but the most important thing is if you are a web developer, the key technologies, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. This is kind of like the go-to place to get all the basics. It's a reference, it's a learning tool, it's got everything kind of bundled together. Why is it the most valid site? Very frankly, because the W3 organization, right? So if you go to w3.org, they are the body that sets the standards for the web. They're the ones that decide what HTML5 is as a standard. So that's why, out of all the resources listed, this may be your most important one, especially if you continue to code for the web. All right, let's take a look at a few others. Now, some people will have this mindset too where, all right, I'm more interested in learning about the technology. Like, how do I go out there and learn about this stuff? Well, I hope I've pointed you guys enough to like the lynda.com/LinkedIn learning site. right? And showed you how valuable that is and how cool it is and the fact that you guys get it for free. So I'm not going to bring that one up, but that's one of those that we could easily put on this list as well. And I'll tell you what, whenever I have to teach a new technology, right, or if I want to brush up on something I kind of feel weak on, that's where I go. I'm like, oh, let's go see if Linda's got something. Oh, there it is. You know, watch a couple of videos, maybe repeat it a couple of times, whatever it takes just to learn the information. And I hope you guys get into that mindset too. Now, let's talk about some of these other ones here. And I'm going to start with this one, freecodecamp.org. This is kind of a bizarre site, all right? These guys are free, all right? So, I mean, it kind of comes with the name. But basically, if you come to this site, what their mission is to train people how to code and get them into jobs without paying money to go to school. It's like, I don't want to put myself out of work by showing you the site, but at the same time, I'm going to tell you what, we can give you a really rock solid foundation, but there's always going to be stuff that we can't squeeze into our 2-year program. We just don't have enough time to get every topic in. So you might go out looking for a job and somebody might say, hey, you need to know how to do Typescript, right? And you guys might not have any clue what that is right now. Typescript is a form, it's an abbreviated form of JavaScript that's getting really popular out there. So you're like, oh heck, how am I going to learn TypeScript really quick because I'm going to go in for this job interview, right? So you come in here and you just put in, and I'm not even sure that they have anything on TypeScript, but you know what? Let's just press enter and see what all the results are. Yeah. All right. I guess let's say I have to interview on Monday and they're going to ask me about TypeScript. I'll just come here and take the crash course really quick. And you just come in and start reading, and then they get you even further into actually doing things. All right. So they actually have complete courses in here, and they have a lot of stories with this website. You know, if you follow them, and I happen to subscribe to their email list because I think it's a pretty good one. This one of the founders of the organization, his name is Quincy. I'll just search for Quincy, and you can see I'm on their mail list, and every once in a while I find interesting articles and I'll flag them and I try to share them with the class. So, for example, I flagged this one the other day, right? Freelancing 101 for developers and how to start earning your side income. So what this guy does, and he's one of the originators of that site, is every week he sends out a list of 5 links that he thinks you should check out. Sometimes it's like, learn how to do this. Sometimes it's on their own website. Sometimes it's on external websites. But I think it's kind of interesting, I'm teaching a capstone class right now. So when you guys get to the end of your 2-year degree, you're going to take a course called Web Project Management or Web Developer, something like that, Project or something like that. And most likely I'll be the one teaching it. And in that class, you actually create a real website for a real company or organization that actually will be live out on the web. And during that class, I start to tell people, it's like, you guys are sitting here working part-time jobs, right? Making hardly any money and hating what you're doing. What you could be doing for side money is you could be building websites for people. And I thought this was a really cool article that the guy had about how to start to freelance. And you know what? That's how I got into web design, frankly, because I didn't really formally study it. I think I told you guys I only had a 1-credit HTML class in my grad school program, and it was really kind of a joke, and I really taught myself everything. But here I am teaching it, right? Isn't that ironic? So how did I learn so much about it? Well, I just got into the situation where somebody said, hey, I need a website. And my wife kind of volunteered me. She's like, my husband can do that for you. And then I ended up creating a website for free for a nonprofit organization my wife worked with. And before I knew it, other people were coming to me and I started charging money. And before I knew it, I had a really kind of lucrative side business going, freelancing, creating websites for people. sometimes for some really good money for hardly any work. And that should be really appealing for you guys because it comes with like freedom at the same time. All right, let's go back and look at some other links here. Very often when you run into coding problems and you go, oh, I got this coding problem, my IDE is throwing this error, or I get this compiler error, or I go to W3 and it throws this error at me and I can't figure out what's wrong. Stack Overflow, and I know that the branding here is not really clear, is probably the de facto go-to place for people that are coders that have problems with their technology trying to figure out how to make their code work. Like, hey, I did this and this is the error I get and I don't know how to fix it. And so this is a huge...
It's kind of confusing at first, too.
Yeah, it can be, because you're looking at basically conversations, right? Like discussion board conversations. So somebody makes a post, and then all these people jump in and respond to it, right? And sometimes you get really good responses, and sometimes not so much. But it is one of the go-to places that coders go to, including us as instructors and developers. When you work professionally, you'll find a lot of people end up on Stack Overflow looking for fixes. And that's the beautiful thing about coding is people that code share all their stuff online anyhow, including fixes, and they love helping other people out. And then if you run into a problem, right, chances are you may have been here looking and then somebody else posts the same problem and then you kind of become the expert because you already figured out how to fix it. And there's kind of like a sense of pride that goes with that. So one thing you can do is actually join the site as a member to get stuff. I've never joined as a member, but I use it all the time for like just trying to figure out issues. And for me, it's usually like really high-end, difficult issues that you cannot find answers to any other way. Because if like Microsoft's got a problem with like their SharePoint server product, chances are they're not telling the world about it, right? But if there's an issue and a workaround, the experts that know it will post it here. And you can find really good information. So Stack Overflow is one of those really cool sites. All right. The other thing that you should get into is going to reputable, and I say this with like very sincere caution and strength, right? Reputable news sources for technology information. That does not mean, you know, Tom's blog on what I think the coolest gaming PCs are. Not that Tom doesn't know what he's talking about, but this is ZDNet. Do you know what ZDNet's responsible for? They're the publishing house for all the major computing publications in this country. So like PC World, Computer World, I can't even name all the magazines they do, but all the big periodicals are run through this publishing house. And they have so much information on this site, newsletters, news stories, you know, just for example, I mean, you see how like quickly the stories pop up here? You know? So this just popped up a couple minutes ago. Google's $2.1 billion bet on Fitbit. So Google just bought Fitbit for $2.1 billion. All right, so why is that important to you? Well, it might not be important to you at all because you might be one of those people that does not have like a smartwatch, right? Or doesn't use the thing on your phone where you can count your steps and burn your calories or whatever, right? But why would Google be interested in a company like Fitbit? So here's where my head goes. I know that there's companies like Apple and Samsung, right, that kind of have like smartwatch divisions and little gadgets like that that tether off of your phone. So Google must be hedging their bets on Fitbit as a technology that can tether to their devices. I'm just guessing here without reading the article. Why would that be important for you guys as developers? Well, you might say that it's not. But I'm going to tell you what, a real hot growth area in coding right now is coding for watches. Somebody's got to write the software. Guess what the languages are for coding for that, predominantly? HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. That's the number one coding approach for those devices. So I think that for you guys, it shows you that little wearable small devices are going to be huge because Google's betting on it. All right. So now the reason I just even talk about that at all is the fact that you guys should try to find a source of technology information that's like from current periodicals. And I can point out some, like anything from ZDNet is going to be pretty good. So they have so many different magazines, you know, and topics that they cover, you know, so look at all the different, you know, things that they have here, you know, topic-wise. And then you can also subscribe to their newsletters. And I'll tell you what, I used to do that, and now I've stopped because I pull in my news sources from other spots. But like ones that I go to, for example, and I look at like daily. I usually go to the BBC News technology section daily. And I think this is interesting, right? This is not an American perspective, and that's another thing that why I go here, because sometimes as Americans we kind of ignore the fact that there's a whole world out there. This is a British news source, and they have a little bit different perspective on things, so you get a little bit more of the European flavor and international flavor in it, which I really appreciate. Notice they talk about Google here as well, and notice right to the smartwatch, right? But you know, their top story today is how Silicon Valley enables online slave markets. Well, that's pretty, I don't think that's on like, I don't think that's on my Google Newsfeed probably, right? I'm guessing. It's probably not in the Journal Sentinel or the Kenosha News Times or whatever it's called. But this is the kind of stuff, you have to find sources for technology that are really good. There's some other major publications that have really good technology sections, and one of them, believe it or not, is Forbes. Now, I see that, okay, Wendy flagged an article here, so it's at 8 web development trends coming in 2018. So this is dated, right? But let's check it out. Let's turn off all these silly pop-ups and stuff. All right. 8 web development trends that should have the largest overall impact on the industry in 2018. So let's see if they're true. Improved online support. Right. Yeah, through what? Chatbots. Even Gateway's got a chatbot now. Have you guys ever gone to the Gateway website and then like 2 minutes later, if you don't do anything, a little thing pops up, hey, can I assist you? Right? Here's the cool thing though, the Gateway ones are actually real people. They're not chatbots. Do you guys even know what a chatbot is?
Yeah. It's
Right.
basically it's a computerized marketer. It's a computerized person on the end line.
Yeah, that's a better way to say it, Cordy. It is a computerized person on the other end of the line. Like, for example, I remember getting on a Time Warner or Spectrum, whatever they're called now, their website. I was having...
Time Warner cables because they didn't change the billing address yet.
Well, anyhow, you know, I got online with them because I was having an issue, and I wanted to talk to tech support, right? So like, fine, I'll do the chat thing. The chat thing comes up, and it took me a little while, but it failed what we called the Turing test. Well, let's talk about that too. And that is the fact that I realized after a while that I was not really talking to a person, that I was talking to an AI, or really a program. And after a while, I was like, hey, are you an actual person? Well, how else can I help you? You know, it was like kind of avoiding the question. I'm like, all right, like, you know, I get it. And Joe just raised his hand. What do you got to say, Joe? Did you chat? The audio from ZDNet is still on from us. Oh, I am sorry about that. Where is ZDNet? Ah. All right. So that one tab was playing audio. So sorry about that. Yeah, but that's kind of the thing, right? All right, progressive web apps, whatever that is. Yeah. that appear to users like a mobile application but are truly web pages or websites. You know what? Majority of apps on your phone are actually websites. They're just packaged up as apps. Push notifications with websites. That's like I just went to, what was it, ZDNet or one of these sites, and it said, do you want to see notifications from this site? I always say block, right? It's like the last thing I need is another pop-up on my screen, right? But you have seen a rise in that. One of the biggest rises in that, honestly, is now that a lot of websites are trying to comply with European privacy rules. You go to their website and they say, hey, we use cookies. You should know that. You should say okay that you're cool with that. Otherwise, you should leave. And there are some websites that I go to, and like the ZDNet site, popped up a video and all that. I usually kind of hate sites that do that to me. And I tend not to go back. And some websites, if their cookie policy seems kind of obnoxious, I'm like, there seems like a lot of clickbait on here, a lot of advertisements, a lot of auto-playing videos. You know what? I really don't need it, right? Sometimes, unfortunately, it's like the only source of information. But you got to remember, these publishing places that do online articles, they're not getting you to buy their $5 magazine off the shelf. So they got to pay the bills somehow, folks. So sometimes there's like a trade-off. Like sometimes you just say, okay, fine, let the ads play, and so I can get to the content. All right. Single page websites. Yeah, that's a really big thing. So instead of creating websites that have multiple pages, we create websites where all the content's on one page, and when you click on a menu item, it just scrolls to that section. Now, people are like, why do you need that? Well, I'll tell you why. A lot of websites, especially informational ones, tend to be pretty simplistic. And they kind of really don't need a lot of stuff, a lot of separate pages to get their point across. Additionally, a lot of those websites also pull in content dynamically. Should I give you an example of a really good single-page website? How about your Gmail? This is a single-page website, but it's actually an application. So when I click on a message, it's not reloading the screen, folks. It's just reloading that area of the screen. So this kind of qualifies. So really, what they're saying to you is that single page websites are often just online applications. Yeah, static websites, you know what? They're kind of making a comeback. And I always tell people sometimes they take on projects and they use these big complicated CMSs and weird frameworks and stuff to try to do this like really fancy stuff when sometimes you can accomplish the same thing with a basic HTML website and still get the point across. And it's a whole lot cheaper and easier to maintain and all that kind of stuff. So those are making kind of a comeback. Motion user interface. That's kind of a bizarre concept that says the interface has been a top concern for developers for years. Even the best looking design can be rather pointless if you can't find the information you need. Have you ever gone to a website and you can't find what you're looking for? So what do they mean by motion user interface? What do they say? It allows for the use of animations and transition to help alert users to actions or important components. So have you ever pulled up an app or a website where you go to it, and the whole point is, if you're looking for something, they kind of help you find it. All right. I always kind of use like the Facebook page as an example of interesting web design for this reason, right? So I go here, and you can see my wife and I have our profile so we can quickly log in. You also see my username and password are already auto-typed, right? I hate typing passwords, so I let the browser save them. But really, what are your options here? Basically, your options are 2 or 3, all right? Log in, sign up, or get the hell out. I mean, those are your 3 options. If you're not a member, can you find where you sign up? It's pretty damn easy, right? And that's totally by intent. Now, this isn't exactly the point that they're making, but the point that they're making is on some apps, they'll have stuff that moves, jumps, shakes, fades, points at it. blobs or whatever, just to get your attention. This is where you want to click. Hello? You know? And for as silly as that is, sometimes you kind of almost have to shout to your users to get them to do it. There's no mistake that their sign up button is big and green. Because you see it, right? And that's the beauty of their simple interface. And next time you guys land on a website for the first time, take stock of what you're looking at and how they're presenting information and what they're asking you to do, that more importantly, on the website. Think about that. All right. All right, lots of different resources here. And a couple that are related to content curation. So we're going to kind of like backtrack and look at these when we go to the next section. So we're going to come back and look at those. But you need to find some way to kind of keep up on your industry, whatever that is. There's lots of sources out there. This is kind of an interesting list. So this list, keep in mind, is one where us instructors kind of collaborated a little bit to develop this. And I think the ones that we were probably most in agreement on were like W3 Schools, Stack Overflow, Free Code Camp, and then whatever you prefer to use for getting news information. Notice that Microsoft's developer network is also on here, so I'm going to actually open that one up. And web technology tends to be kind of an open source thing, and Microsoft traditionally has not been a very good open source company, but that's changing, folks. Microsoft is kind of changing their tune, and they do really have a lot of really cool resources online for free, and their Microsoft Developer Network, if you subscribe to it, is an excellent source of information. It's also, like, if you're part of the fray of being in a developer network, and I'm going to tell you what, I haven't been signed up for it for a few years now, and maybe that's good or bad, but one of the benefits I would get when I was a member is you'd get early builds of Windows. So like I was using like Windows 7 like a year and a half before it was out because I was part of the developer network. So why do they do that? Because as a developer, when the day that Windows 7 comes out, you want to be selling your software that's written for Windows 7. So how do you do that? You get pre-releases of Windows and test it on top of it. But it's kind of fun when you get advanced versions of things. But they also have, what I think is really a great resource is this Microsoft Developer Network magazine. And they also have these other options here too. So anything that you're learning to learn more about. So for example, you guys at some point will be delving into Visual Studio, probably when you get to web programming 2 or your JavaScript class. And how do you work with this product? Now, this is kind of interesting. Next week, I think it's next week, I'm going to have you guys look at installing some IDEs, and Visual Studio might be one of them. If you guys are curious about doing this, bring your laptops next week, and I can help you on the process of getting it installed. That way, when you get to your second semester or beyond and you need this product, you won't have to waste time at the beginning of the semester figuring out how to download and install it. I can kind of help you well in advance. But you notice that they have multiple different versions, including versions for the Mac. Yay, Mac people. Although it's still not as cool as the PC one, but it's close. But they have some really cool products. And really, the thing that says best-in-class tools for any developer, that is pretty spot on. So for as much as us open source people like to hate Microsoft, their IDE, Visual Studio, their main product, is still king of the hill in my mind. And I've tried many different IDEs. And Visual Studio Code, and I don't know how many of you guys have toyed with that yet, that's a really good one for doing web. I know like Joe, who's online, he's a big fan, and that's one you're using too?
Yeah, the Snapchat looks like the Dreamweaver that for the web website adding on to the website coding, but at least the color from the sample.
Yeah, so, yeah, some of it does. I mean, it looks very, very similar. But Visual Studio Code's like one of those free editors that's really gotten a lot of momentum in the last couple of years since it came out, and a lot of people are really digging it as a coding tool for just about any language, mostly because it's free and because it's open source. It's also extensible, so people write plugins for it. So you can do all sorts of crazy stuff. I haven't really delved that deeply into it myself, frankly, because I like a lot of my other tools, but when I'm on the Mac, it's my go-to editor, replacing some of the other tools that I used to use. All right, let's move on to the other category with one quick little caveat here. Notice that at the bottom, another resource that we put in here to learn about your industry and your career path are these. And notice these are what we call tech placement firms that have a strong presence in our area. So Tech Systems, Avanade, Skyline, and Brooksource are all 4 companies in this Milwaukee/Chicago area, let's call it, that find jobs for people in IT. And why they're a good resource. We invite these people to our advisory meetings. Sometimes they're there, sometimes they're not. But when they're there, we always find it fascinating because they'll tell you, especially Tech Systems, we've worked a lot with them. And a lot of our students go through them when they graduate. They'll say, right now, up in the Milwaukee area, we have a big need for .NET developers that know SQL Server. Or like they'll name a specific technology and they'll tell you what's hot. Like what people are actually hiring right now. Because if companies are going to a placement firm to fill positions, it's because they cannot find them by putting regular job ads in. Remember when we had Jason in here, right? And he just changed his title on LinkedIn to like JavaScript React developer, and boom, 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 he like had a position. And that's like what these kind of companies do too. So there is a way to work in this field many different ways. You can always freelance in web. Right? You can get a traditional job, but you can do what a lot of people have done, and that is they do contract work for firms like this. Sometimes it's short term, a few months. Sometimes it's long term, 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years on contract, and make a lot of money. These firms do come with a price though, but they're really good at kind of keeping their ear to the ground in the industry because all the positions that are unfilled, the companies go to them to try to fill them. So when you graduate and you're looking for work, these are companies you can go to. And here's the other thing that some of them will do, is they'll look at your skill set, they'll give you in-house tests, and say, hey, you're a little weak on your JavaScript, you should brush up a little bit, and then we can put you into this position. So they help you along the way. All right, let's talk about this concept of content curation. So first of all, so John asked, he goes, well, I don't know what that is, right? What's curation? Here it is. Content curation is the process of gathering information relative to a particular topic or area of interest, usually with the intention of adding value. Services that people implement content curation are called content curation services and can be used by as well by end users. So businesses use these things a lot, but they have an example here, and you know what, we have this linked up. But so the process of gathering information relevant to a particular topic or area of interest. I would say, to me, that sounds like taking notes. What do you guys think? Do you remember I had an assignment a few weeks back called Tools for Keeping It Straight? I was kind of on that path right there with you guys. So I showed you how I use Evernote, right? And I maybe even showed you how I use OneNote. So this is a product from Microsoft. And I would call this a content curation tool. So, of course, it pops up in my second screen, but, you know, this is something like I use to do note-taking. So if I'm at a meeting, and I'm like, oh shoot, I got no paper or pencil or whatever. I pull up a screen, I create a tab, I add a page, and then you can just click anywhere and just start typing. You can copy and paste, drag and drop, put web links in here, screen grabs in here, whatever it is. And you can see I have like a whole bunch of stuff that I've done like over time here, you know, where I just take notes and interesting. I mean, I don't even remember this stuff, you know, when I typed it in, but, you know, sometimes I do go back to it. But it's just a way to gather up information. So that's an example of a content curation tool. If you look at some of the ones that we suggested here, we have some products, and this is not one that I use, Flipboard, but I know a lot of the teachers that use it. And I'm trying to look at an example. So I'm just going to pull one up, all right? So some people, when they're doing content curation, they not only want to save it for themselves, but they want to share it with other people. So Flipboard is a tool where you can actually create kind of like a page, right? And then people come in and they start like posting stuff in there that are related to the topic, right? So whoever's got this Flipboard going is obviously interested in protecting the oceans somehow. And then they go around and gather articles from various places. So then if you want like one spot where you can go to find all these articles about saving the ocean, well, here you go. Right? So it's kind of like social media in a sense, right? But it's also a place where you can gather and store information. One content curation tool that I kind of use sometimes, and I think I pointed this one out as well, is a thing called Google Keep. Right? And I use it as kind of like this, oh, that's a really great idea, I don't want to forget that. Or like I've been working with Christopher because we're working on our data science courses, we're writing the curriculum for them. And so I came in here the other day and I just put a bunch of links in here to really cool articles. Or when I was doing Ruby on Rails a couple years ago, I had a couple of sites here that I gathered information. Or when I was, I don't even know when I did this one, but Web Dev Resources, well, here's an iPad emulator website. So if you want to see like what your app looks like, of course I'm reading that, right? Do you see what this is doing though? Hell no. I'm deleting that one. Goodbye. Bad website. All right. But Google Keep, what's neat about Google Keep, it's kind of like OneNote, but it's bundled into your Google app suite. So you can load up the app on your phone, any browser you log into with your account, it's all bundled in. But you will get in that situation, folks, where how do you keep track of all that information? And there's some good ways and there's some bad ways. Let me show you a bad way. I think of like, I pick up my wife's laptop once in a while, I log in, and I'll go, oh my God, honey, why do you have like 50 tabs open? Like in her browser. Because I don't want to lose, I like that information, I don't want to lose that information. I'm like, well, bookmark it. Yeah, but sometimes they go back to the website and it's gone. I'm like, well, then what? What do? How about you copy and paste it? Right? You want to know one thing that's kind of neat, and I don't know if Google Chrome has this yet, but one thing I thought was really neat about Microsoft Edge as a browser is it has some interesting tools built in. And see, like you hover up here, Hub, Favorites, Reading List, Books, History, and Downloads, and you have this other Add Notes. Well, actually, click on the Add Notes thing, and notice how your toolbar changes. This is inside of Microsoft Edge now. And I don't really use this in the classroom as much, but I could go, well, here, check out Planet Earth and see how, right? So it's got a little highlighter, right? Or if I want to like highlight some text, it's got yellow. Well, I can't see the yellow there, but there's yellow. I can highlight yellow. I can also erase those. I can throw in a, hey, this is weird, right? Type notes right on the screen. I can also copy, right? I can save those. And I think those are fascinating, and not only that, but you can also put whatever stuff you grab here and have it pump directly into OneNote. Now, from what I understand, and I haven't played with it yet, Firefox just added some tools that way too. So let's go take a look at what Firefox has, and I'm not sure where they do it, but somebody told me that they. All right. Well, I'm not seeing it quickly, so it must not be there, right? But they have some tool that they have built in. All right. Now, I guess I'm not seeing it, but supposedly they have a tool that does the same thing with built-in screen grabbing and stuff. So I think that's kind of a helpful way to curate information. Now, there's a lot of different ways to gather information, folks, and really what it comes down to is what's right for one person isn't right for another. But in this activity listing for content curation, there's this list of what professional companies actually use to do content curation. So let's see if this loads up here. Kind of taking its time. All right. And it's not loading fast enough for my taste, so I'm going to try it one more time. Here we go. All right. So this is a blog about curation, and they talk about some of the big products. And just from the graphic here, you're going to see a bunch of things, products that maybe you've never even thought about using, and maybe a couple that you recognize. Is there anything on this list that you guys recognize? Pinterest, yeah, there you go. Yeah, I look at these and go, I don't know. But there's a lot of them that I have not looked at, but all of them probably have. Well, there's Flipboard, the one that we just looked at, and Pinterest. You know, let's bring Pinterest up for a second. Pinterest is kind of an interesting website because it is considered social media, but it has kind of a different approach to it. Now, notice I'm already logged in, right? Because I do have an account. But look at what it does. Isn't this interesting? It presents information not in like a top-down, text-based list format. It's in a graphical tile format. And what you do in Pinterest is you create pin boards and you pin things to it. So for example, I have somewhere in here, I have one, all right, so we went on vacation a while back, and the only reason I did this is because I took a certification class, right? And one of my things was you have to find a tool like this and share like some pictures or something. So this is what I used. And so this is from our trip out west, and boy, the kids have grown since then. But you see, like basically you put in like a picture, for example, right? And other people can look at it too. Now, how I discovered Pinterest was kind of weird because when I was running a business site, I would always look at like our web statistics, you know, like where incoming traffic is coming from, search terms that people look for. And I saw a little reference link that one week I had like, I don't know, 50 references from Pinterest. And I'm like, what the heck is Pinterest? And it turned out that some person found one of our products, posted it up on their pin board, and we got 50 hits off of it. You know, like they went there and they brought 50 visitors to our website. So it was actually kind of interesting that way. But this is just kind of a way to graphically share information. And the interesting thing about Pinterest is this is my photograph that I actually took this one. But then it starts to bring up pictures from other people from the same site. So you can imagine, like, okay, so this is Ruby Beach out on the West Coast and like state of Washington. But you can imagine if I maybe put in stuff about like HTML or outer space or Pokemon or whatever, that I would start pulling in other people's related interests here. So there's kind of a network that forms too. So not only is there you gathering up your information for your own sake, but being able to tap into other people's at the same time. And I think that's kind of a fascinating concept. All right, so whatever tools you choose to use, you will come down here ultimately and add it to the Padlet. Okay, so the Padlet, which I actually have embedded into the screen here, you can actually link to it externally, which I'm going to do here. So it's actually a full screen thing. Or you can actually do it right within Blackboard. It actually works both ways. But Padlet is this website where you guys can go to and post stuff. And so the assignment is this. After researching curation tools, please post your favorite curation tool or tools on the Padlet, add your name of the curation tool, and how you currently use the tool or plan to use it. You may also state if you honestly don't think you will use the tool, but you must list at least one. So I will get those people like, I found this, but I hate it. You know, it's like, okay, great. Well, tell me why you hate it and why you won't use it, you know? And then how are you going to keep track of information? Because, you know, honestly, you are keeping track of information somehow. You know what some people do? Is they email themselves. Or are you one of those people that you just take your phone and it's like you're on a computer, but you're taking a picture of your screen? Well, all I can say is if you're doing that, make sure you're backing up your photos to somewhere. You know, whatever your technique is, that's fine. But have a technique and figure it out. How are you content curating? All right. So just the last note here. In order to like participate in this, whether you bring it up in the browser or you bring it up in that window, all you have to do is come in here and click this plus sign down in the corner. It'll throw up a box, and you just type in your stuff. When you're done with that assignment, in order to earn your points, click the assignment link and type in ready for grading. I'll go to the Padlet and look for your name, and if you put something in there, you got your points. Pretty simple to do. Heck, if you know a product that you use already, you could just type it in, you got one of your assignments done, boom, like that. And that's what you guys should do. So Padlet is actually a content curation tool also, and it's kind of a fun one because if you notice, you can get, kind of like Google Docs, you can get multiple people in here typing at the same time. And then as we build our list, you can come back to it and take a look at what others people put in. And if you have something that's really cool, oddball, it could be a mobile app, it could be for any operating system, any device, whatever, that you think we really never have heard of, and you come up with something really brilliantly cool, I might even consider giving you an extra credit point if it's something that's completely off my radar. So, does anybody use anything like way out in outer space that I've never heard of to gather up their info? All right, that's fine. Whatever approach you use, come up with some way to retain information. All right, folks, that will end this class and this video.